Dear Hadith followers, today's video is in regards to showing you your own Hadiths that explain certain ayats in the Qur'an. Now I have done this topic before, so I'll make a playlist so you guys can have them together, and basically I'm going to do as I've done in the other video, that is to grab your own Hadith and show you the relevant Qur'an ayats that you relate it to, and then show you that the people involved, the ones that your own Hadiths label, actually turn out to be doing something bad rather than something virtuous. So dear Hadith followers, this is part 2 in showing you your own hadiths that explain certain ayats in the Quran. Dear Hadith followers, welcome to another episode. So glad you're here. Now the surah that I wanted to concentrate on is, the ayat I should say that I wanted to concentrate on is Surah 66 number 3. Now this ayat is actually provided by most hadith followers to justify that the Prophet actually gave a hadith. They say, look, the Prophet gave a hadith. And they also use it to justify, they say, look, if the Prophet reveals something, how come we don't know the details of what he revealed if Allah did actually give him something? So this is the surah that the ayat I want to concentrate on. It's basically the story in regards to his Prophet's wives and giving him information in regards to something that they've done. Actually, you know what, I'll explain Surah 66 a little bit. If you continue to read, then, so the Prophet's wives have done something wrong, and then it continues on to talk about the wife of Lut and the wife of Nuh. Peace be upon all the prophets that I mentioned throughout my videos, and all the blessed people. But it mentions their wives as a bad example. So as women who have actually failed in their task, in their duty of being, righteous. So it's giving the Prophet's wives 2 bad examples, and then Allah, because he always is balanced, he then gives them 2 good examples of women that, they should look up to, and he gives them the examples of Maryam and Firaun's wife towards the end. So Surah 66 is basically that. If you want to remember the Prophet's wives as well, guys, just an easy way of remembering it. Surah 66 is in regards to 2 of his wives, and half of that, Surah 33, is in regards to his wives as well. Most of it. There are scattered places, but the majority of details to his wife or wives and is 33 and 66. Now, what I'll do is I'll read through this 66:3, the very famous one that they always quote, and it says, "And when confided the Prophet to one of his wives a statement, and when she informed about it and made it apparent Allah to him, he made known a part of it and avoided a part. Then when he informed her about it, she said, 'Who informed you this?' He said, 'Has informed me the all-knower, the all-aware.'" So guys, I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. So it says here that the Prophet made known, he made known a part of it and avoided a part. Is this revelation? Can the Prophet actually make known a part of it and then avoid a part? Well, if I go to 567, you see it says, "O Messenger, convey what has been revealed to you from your Lord. And if not you do, then not you have conveyed." So his duty as a prophet is to deliver all of it. He has no choice he can't avoid a part of it. Then he doesn't reveal the Quran. The Quran says in Baqarah as well, do not hide the truth, do not mix truth with falsehood, and do not hide the truth. So in 242. So he can't hide the truth. It goes against. So it isn't revelation. Another detail to prove that it's not revelation, it says, "and made apparent." وَأَزَرَّهُ. Now this made apparent is very, very different to when the Quran says, for example, it will say, "Anzalna ayatin," or "unzulna." The word sent down. It's not sent down, it's made apparent. Made apparent is basically when what's happening here is the Prophet is making a choice based on actions, the actions that he's witnessed, and making a decision based on what he's witnessed of them. That's what it is. So made apparent. Made apparent is different from revelations, guys. This is very, very different. Like in the Quran, it talks about inspiration as well. It says Musa's Musa's mother was inspired. It says bees are inspired. So if we say that revelation is inspiration as well, then we got to accept Musa's mother as a prophet, and we have to accept bees as a prophet as well, which is pretty hard to do. But to continue to go upwards, so made apparent is different. It does say hadith. And now what I like about my hadith following friends is when it says hadith in, they'll say, "Look, it says hadith," and they'll scream at me. They'll say, "Look, it says hadith, but However, yes, it does. I'm not disagreeing with you. However, when you point them out another ayat where it says hadith, you'll say, you know what, guess what? It does mention, the word hadith is mentioned more than there. And you'll point them, whoops, wrong one, sorry. If I point them out, for example, this ayat, which mentions pretty much the same word, one letter different. If I say, look, it says hadith in here. So they'll say, no, that does not mean hadith. That means statement. So they'll take the English translation to cover the word hadith in this one because it is saying, how can you take any other hadith beside Allah in his verses? However, when you come to this ayat and it says hadithan, they say, look, it says hadith. So yeah, one place they take it, the other place they don't. They take whatever they want. It's pick and choose. What a great religion they got. And then this hadith, however, it's not just hadith. You can't just say it says hadith here. It's because it doesn't. There's something that it comes with, and it comes with a clause. It says asarra, confided. Now, this confided doesn't really do it justice, the translation. However, if we go into my root page, you'll see confided is to speak secretly, divulge a secret, manifest a secret, secret, and we'll go to Hans Ware dictionary meaning right at the bottom. And again, you'll see sir is secret, thought, heart, innermost, and yada, yada, yada. So, he did not, it was a secret, guys. So this ayat here, if you say that the Prophet released the hadith, the only place in the Qur'an where the only place where he does give a hadith directly, and we are told it's a secret, something for not public, it's not public interest, and it's just meant for his wives. The only place, and then you know what, the second one I'm going to show you guys is, I will show that video. I'll make that the second part. And the only place in the Quran where it says that the Prophet, where they directly ask the Prophet for a hadith as well. So this one is the only place in the Quran where they're showing the Prophet is actually providing a hadith. It says straight out. And then the next one I'll show you guys is the only place in the Quran where they ask him for a hadith. But what I wanted to show is the hadiths that relate to it. Now, in regards to these hadiths, guys, you'll notice there's a lot of discrepancies between them. What I mean by that is it changes. Some places it will be Hafsa, some places will be Sauda, some places it's one wife and the other wife. So I can't really put my finger down on who's who and who's what. Even with the Sahih Hadith, there are contradictions in the Sahih Hadith. However, what's important to note is even with all of them, all right, you'll see one thing that's very, very common is Aisha is mentioned in all of them. Even though Hafsa changes in some of them, the wife's roles change in some of them. Aisha and Hafsa are predominantly there. Aisha is definitely there, one of the two wives mentioned in this ayat. And Hafsa could be the second one. Again, it changes. Now, sorry about that. The differences in the stories are, if you read some part of the story, the hadith, the one hadith seems to be a story where the Prophet's wives were jealous, and they wanted to of the Prophet himself, and of a pleasure that the Prophet had with another wife, and that was he was eating honey. So the blame is put upon the Prophet here. The Prophet actually ate honey, and this blame is put upon himself. You can read your own hadiths and look for yourselves. But the second story, which seems to be the different perspective, is that one of his wives was actually very displeased with the Prophet because he had legal intercourse with his wife, but it was with a slave that he owns, and he had it on her day, in her house, in her bed. Okay, so there's very big differences in the story, and some people actually say that they're not the same story, but they could have happened in close proximity. But the first story again is that the wives are jealous and they wanted to lift this pleasure that he had, which was eating honey. And the second story is the wife was angry because he slept with a slave on her day in her bed. Oh my god, this is so shocking. But anyway, no matter what it is, that's not the point. The point is Aisha is always present throughout them. Either she's narrating or she's within it. She's always present. That's important because when we come to the Quranic ayat in 66.3 and we continue on, as I've explained in 66.4, about Surah 66, they have made a mistake. And if you keep reading, it says, if you both turn to Allah, so indeed inclined your hearts. But if you back up each other against him, against who? If you back up each other to the two wives, if you back up yourselves against the Prophet, wives against the Prophet, then indeed Allah, He is his protector, and Jibreel and the righteous and the angels, and the righteous believers and the angels after that are his assistants. So the Prophet's wives, they're being told to turn to Allah, don't back up each other against the Prophet. So they've done something really, really wrong, and they're actually trying to get him in trouble. Now, it is so wrong whatever they've done. Now, Qur'an doesn't, I'm not going to go into detail as I said. It's not about the honey or whatever. It's the principle behind it. Qur'an says about the Prophet's wives, again, very clearly, one of these wives, I can't emphasize this enough, is Aisha. All right, the one who provided most of the hadiths. She's known for her trustworthiness. That's the only reason we can accept all these hadiths. If you can't trust her, if there's questions about her in her situation, then you have to question all of the hadiths as well. But Aisha is one of the wives. Quran says, perhaps his Lord, if he divorce you, to Aisha being one of the wives, that he will substitute for him wives better than you. Better than you, better than Aisha, better than his wives, better than you. They weren't the best. Aisha is not the best in what she does. And what isn't she the best at, according to your hadith? Submissive, faithfulness, obedient, repentant, who worship, who fast, previously married, and virgins. Now I should say as well, hadith followers, that these previously married, this one usually you guys relate it to Hafsa bint Omar, and this virgin you guys really usually relate it to Aisha bint Abu Bakr. So you guys, these they say that are related. However, it's not in the Quran. It just says previously married and virgins. That's not the point. The point is better than you, submissive. I should say as well, this hadith is actually one of the three things that Omar says agreed with him Allah in regards to it, and this is one of them that it's not. They're trying to disconnect this from the hadith, the ayats before, right? And they're saying that Omar actually delivered this. It was because Omar said so that this came out. Because Omar said to him that he will divorce you and replace him with better than you. So Allah agreed with him and then released this. It's not because Aisha and his wives did something wrong. No. It's got nothing to do with that. This is all because Omar wanted it again. But better than you. Now I'll show you guys as well something. Because as I mentioned at the start, 33 is the Prophet's wives, and 66. So I'll show you guys 33, and we'll get this list. I'll see if I can do this, and I'll drag it across just a little bit. Yeah, it's going to be a bit tight, but we can do it. All right, and I'll show you guys this one. So this one on the right hand side here, ooh, it's a bit tight. This one on the right hand side here is Surah 33, where it mentions the Prophet's wives, and I'll actually go back one step so you guys can see that I'm not fibbing. And here on the left is the list of wives, things that they are better than: submissive, faithful, obedient, repentant, worship. Now why I put these lists side by side. So in 33, 32, O wives of the Prophet, continues to read. So it's talking about the Prophet's wives. And then the next ayat, again, is, and stay in your houses, again to the Prophet's wives. Continues. Okay. And only wishes Allah to remove from you impurities, O people of the house, and to purify you, purification with thorough purification. Now, I should say our Shia brethren, and a lot of Sunni brethren I should say as well, they take this, O people of the house, to mean the 5 people who are related to the Prophet, being his cousin, daughter, and his grandchildren. That's what they say that this Ahlul Bayt is related to. However, this Ahlul Bayt, if you look clearly, it's written to the Prophet's wives, and before and after is still directed to the Prophet's wives. So I see it as the Prophet's wives. But he wants to purify them from impurities. Alright? So this is important, because if we keep going through the impurities, I'll miss out 34, please read. But I'll move on to 35. In 35, Allah gives us a list of requirements that we can all successfully gain to become part of Ahlul Bayt. And it says, I'm not going to read it actually, but what I'll do is just ask you guys to have a look at this 33, 35 and 66, 5. Put them side by side, right? And then look at the words. His wives better than you in being submissive And we have each word repeats: submissive and obedient, believing, faithful, repentant, charity, fast. All the words repeat. What I'm trying to show you guys is, if their wives, if this is actually Aisha, and she did not fix her ways, she did not mend her ways, she can't be trusted. That's the truth of it. You can't trust any of the words that she gave. See, I mean, the whole policy that we're told of hadith's rejection is, if the character turns out to be something good or not of good character, then we should reject it. However, here clearly they're not the best, and there is something wrong with Aisha, and she is one of the most detailed hadith providers out there. Now that I'm on Surah 33 as well, and 33:53, I'll stick to this one and I'll show you the second one. So we'll move this across and move this over here. The next one I wanted to show you guys would be 33:53. All right, and we'll drag this across just so you can get a bit more better view. All right, so 33:53 is in regards to the prophets. Again, as I said, the prophet is the only place where he actually was asked to deliver a hadith. And it says here, "O you who believe, do not enter the houses of the prophet except when permission is given to you for a meal without awaiting its preparation. But when you are invited, then enter, and when you have eaten, then disperse, and not seeking to remain for a conversation." Lil hadithin, not seeking to remain for a conversation. Indeed, that was troubling the prophet, and he is shy of dismissing you, but Allah is not shy of the truth. And when you ask him anything, then ask them from behind a veil, that pure for your heart and their heart, and not is for you that you trouble the messenger of Allah, and not that you should marry his wives from after him, even indeed that is near Allah an enormity. So it troubled the prophet. It clearly says the only place in the entire Qur'an where the prophet is asked for a hadith directly, and it troubles the prophet here. And if you read at the top, seeking to remain for a conversation, they're asking him for a conversation of some sort, a hadithin, and it troubled the prophet. Alright, so we know that it troubles the prophet when we ask for a hadith. Now this hadith here is actually Abu Hurairah's sensational story hadith, and they actually attribute this to, it was Abu Hurairah who was in the house and was pestering the prophet. So if we look at his hadith, and here it is. I'm not going to actually read this one because the video is getting a bit too long. But if you just go through and read it yourselves, what it seems to be, and it says pretty clearly, is that the Abu Hurairah himself, who is narrating it, another main contributor of hadith, he's actually asking, pestering the prophet. It seems to be food that he's asking for. Like, he seems to be actually hungry, because he's talking about hunger and all that stuff. And he gets food, but it's not food that he's actually after. At one stage as well, it seems to be knowledge that he's seeking. And it's very, very confusing. But there are a couple of hadiths in regards to it. But if you read it, it's clearly saying that, I mean, the Qur'an says that the prophet was troubled by it. See, permission is given to you for a meal. So he's actually, the prophet is given to a meal. And then disperse, and not seeking for a conversation. Indeed, it was troubling for the prophet. So here, it's something that it's a very gross offense. It's a mistake what he's doing, Abu Hurairah. However, what they've done is they've given it to him as a virtuous act, even though it was quite the opposite. So I don't know how that works. I don't know how. I don't understand the concept of. I mean, here it says, well, that he placed stones on his stomach and all that. Please read it and see the ridiculousness of this story. But, however, whatever he was doing, it doesn't matter what it is, it was troubling the prophet, and Allah was not shy to disperse him. And they actually say that this is Abu Hurairah, is a good thing that he actually did. However, we can see clearly it troubled the prophet. So, dear hadith followers, do you believe troubling the prophet for a hadith was actually correct, when we can see clearly that the hadith itself is incorrect, and the Qur'an says that it troubled the Prophet. So, dear hadith followers, I've left a lot of things for you guys to think about today, and it has been a little bit long. I do apologize. But inshallah, I'll see you guys for next time.